Dr. James Rodriguez had been studying ocean life for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The research station where he worked floated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far from any land. Most days were quiet, just him and his team collecting samples and studying fish, but today was different. The morning started normal enough. James was checking his equipment when something strange appeared on his computer screen. The sensors that measured electrical activity in the water were going crazy. There were signals coming from deep below, deeper than any fish or whale could go. The patterns looked almost like ... communication. This can't be right, James muttered. Tapping the screen, he had seen electrical signals from sea creatures before, but nothing this complex. These signals had structure like someone was trying to send a message. His colleague Tom looked over his shoulder. Equipment malfunction, maybe, James said, but something in his gut told him otherwise. I'm going down to check. Tom raised an eyebrow. Down there? That's nearly 2 miles deep. The pressure will crush anything. James had made thousands of dives in his career, but never this deep. Still, their submarine could handle it. Something was calling to him from down there, and he had to know what it was. 2 hours later, James was descending into the dark depths of the ocean. The sunlight faded quickly, and soon his submarine's lights were the only thing cutting through the black water. Fish with glowing bodies swam past his windows like living stars. As he got deeper, the electrical readings got stronger. His heart was pounding. In all his years of studying the ocean, he had never felt this excited and nervous at the same time. Then he saw it. At first, it looked like a mountain on the ocean floor. But as he got closer, James realized it wasn't natural. The surface was too smooth, too perfect. Strange lights pulsed along what looked like walls and doorways. This wasn't a rock formation. This was a building. A massive, incredible building sitting on the bottom of the ocean. What in the world? James whispered. As his submarine approached, the lights on the structure began to pulse faster. It was like the building was waking up, responding to his presence. James felt a chill run down his spine. Someone or something knew he was there. Suddenly, a section of the structure opened up like a flower blooming. Inside, James could see what looked like a tunnel filled with glowing blue light. The opening was perfectly sized for his submarine, almost like it was inviting him in. Every instinct told him to turn around and swim back to the surface. But James was a scientist. His curiosity was stronger than his fear. Slowly, carefully, he guided his submarine into the tunnel. The tunnel walls were covered in symbols that seemed to move and shift as he passed. The blue light grew brighter, and James felt a strange tingling sensation, like the air itself was alive with energy. His equipment was picking up readings he had never seen before. The tunnel led to a chamber filled with breathable air. James couldn't believe it. How was there air to miles underwater? His submarine's sensors confirmed it. The air was clean and safe to breathe. As he stepped out of his submarine, James felt like he was walking in a dream. The chamber was beautiful beyond description. The walls seemed to be made of living coral that glowed with soft colors. Strange plants grew along the floor, swaying gently even though there was no wind. Then he heard footsteps. James turned around and saw her walking toward him. She looked almost human, but not quite. Her skin had a subtle shimmer to it, like moonlight on water. Her hair moved as if she was underwater, even though they were surrounded by air. Her eyes were the color of the deep ocean, a blue so dark, it was almost black. She wore robes that seemed to be made of sea silk, flowing around her like waves. When she moved, small lights flickered along her skin in patterns that reminded James of fireflies. "Welcome, James Rodriguez," she said, and her voice was like the sound of gentle waves on a beach. "I am Queen Lirelei of the aquatic people." James's mouth fell open. You know my name. How do you speak English?" The Queen smiled, and when she did, the lights on her skin pulsed brighter. "We have been watching your people for a very long time. We have learned your languages, studied your ways. You are not the first human to find us, but you are the first we have chosen to bring here." Chosen? James felt dizzy. "I don't understand." Queen Lirelei gestured for him to follow her. As they walked through corridors that seemed to grow from the living walls themselves, she began to explain. "My people have lived in your oceans for thousands of years," she said. "We built our cities in the deepest places, where humans could not reach. We watched your civilizations rise and fall. We saw you learn to sail, to dive, to explore our waters." They entered a vast chamber with a ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. Gardens of coral and sea plants grew in impossible formations, creating a beauty that took James's breath away. In the distance, He could see other beings like the Queen moving through the water-filled sections of the city. "This is incredible," James whispered. "Your people. How many are there?" The Queen's expression grew sad. "That is why you are here, James. That is why we chose you." She led him to a balcony that overlooked the entire underwater city. James could see thousands of the Queen's people going about their daily lives. They moved with grace through both water and air, their skin patterns creating a constant light show of communication. "For the past 100 years, something terrible has been happening to my people," the Queen said. "The males of our species have been dying. At first, it was just a few, then more, then all of them." James felt his heart skip a beat. "All of them. I am the last queen of our people, and there are no kings left to rule beside me, no fathers to raise children, no males to continue our bloodline." Her voice was filled with a sadness so deep it made James want to cry. "In 20 years, maybe 30, my people will be gone forever." The weight of what she was saying hit James like a wave. An entire species, an entire civilization, was facing extinction. "But what does this have to do with me?" he asked. Queen Lirele turned to face him, and in her eyes, James saw something he had never expected to see. "Hope. Our scientists have been studying human genetics for decades," she said. "We have learned that under the right conditions, our species can be ... compatible. You, James Rodriguez, are the only human we have found who carries the genetic markers necessary to help save my people." James felt like the world was spinning around him. "You're saying that that we ... I am asking you to consider something that has never been asked of any human before," the Queen said softly. "I am asking you to help us survive." The implications of what she was saying crashed over James like a tsunami. She wasn't just asking him to help with research or to share knowledge. She was asking him to become part of their world, to help create a future for her people. "This is impossible," James said, shaking his head. "I'm just a marine biologist. I study fish and coral. I can't." "You can," Queen Lirele said, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm and sent a strange tingling sensation through his entire body. "But the choice is yours. We will not force you. If you wish to return to your world above, you may do so. We will erase your memory of this place, and you will live your life as if this never happened." James looked out over the magnificent city, at the thousands of beings who were facing the end of everything they had ever known. Then he looked at the Queen, at the hope and desperation in her ancient eyes. "How long do I have to decide?" he asked. "Take all the time you need," she said. "But know that every day we wait, we grow closer to the end." As James stood there, surrounded by wonders beyond imagination, he realized that his quiet life of studying ocean creatures was about to change forever. The question was he brave enough to take the leap into the unknown? The Queen's people were counting on him. Their entire future hung in the balance, and somehow, a simple marine biologist from Earth had become their last hope for survival. James couldn't sleep that night. The Queen had given him a beautiful chamber to rest in, with walls that glowed softly like starlight. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the Queen's people. Thousands of them, all depending on him to save their entire race. The next morning, Queen Lirele came to see him. She wore different robes today, simpler ones that made her look less like a ruler and more like a regular person. Her skin patterns were dim, which James was starting to understand meant she was worried. "How are you feeling?" she asked, sitting across from him on what looked like a chair made of living coral. "Honestly, terrified," James said. "Yesterday I was just a guy who studied fish. Now you're telling me I'm the only hope for an entire species. It's too much." The Queen nodded. "I understand. Would you like to see more of our world? Perhaps it will help you decide." James agreed, and they began what felt like the most incredible tour of his life. The Queen showed him through the massive city, which she called Thalasseria. It was unlike anything James had ever imagined. They walked through libraries where knowledge was stored in glowing crystals. When the Queen touched one, images and information flowed through the air like holograms. James saw the history of her people, how they had traveled across the stars millions of years ago, visiting many worlds before choosing Earth as their home. "Why Earth?" James asked. "Your oceans were perfect for us," the Queen explained, "deep, vast, and full of life. We thought we could live here forever in peace." They visited gardens where impossible plants grew. Some flowers sang soft melodies when the wind touched them, others changed colors based on the emotions of people nearby. James watched children playing among the plants, their laughter creating ripples of light across the water. But then the Queen showed him something that broke his heart. They entered a vast chamber filled with what looked like cribs. Hundreds of them, all empty. The room was silent except for the sound of water gently flowing through channels in the floor. "This was our nursery," the Queen said quietly. 50 years ago, it was full of babies. Their laughter echoed through these halls. Now, double quotes, James saw tears in her eyes. Not normal tears, but droplets that glowed like tiny stars before disappearing. "The last male child was born 30 years ago," she continued. "He lived to be 25 before the sickness took him. Since then, no new children have been born." James felt a heavy weight in his chest. "What exactly is this sickness?" "Our scientists believe it's genetic. Something in our DNA became corrupted over time. The males became weaker with each generation, until finally, they couldn't survive it all." They walked through more sections of the city. James saw workshops where incredible technology was created using living materials. He watched artists create sculptures that moved and danced on their own. He met scientists who could communicate with sea creatures and warriors who could swim faster than dolphins. But everywhere he looked, he saw the same thing, only females. An entire civilization of amazing people, all facing extinction because half of their population was gone. "How long do your people live?" James asked. "Much longer than humans," the Queen said. "I am over 300 years old, though that would be considered young for a queen. Most of my people live for 500 years or more." James's mind reeled. 300 years? You look like you're in your 20s. The Queen smiled sadly. "We age differently than humans. But even with our long lives, time is running out. The youngest of my people are already past the age where they can bear children. In 50 years, maybe less, we will all be gone." That evening the Queen brought James to her private chambers. They sat on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the lights of her people create patterns in the darkness. "Tell me about your world," she said. "What would you be leaving behind?" James thought about his life above the ocean. "I have a small apartment near the research station. I spend most of my time alone, studying. I have a few colleagues, but no close friends. My parents died when I was young, and I never married." "No family?" the Queen asked. "No one who would miss me," James said, and realized how sad that sounded. "I've always been more comfortable with fish than people." "Ironic, isn't it?" The Queen studied his face. "You're lonely." "I guess I am," James admitted. "I've spent so much time focused on my work that I never really built a life, just existed." "That's why you were chosen," the Queen said softly. "Not just because of your genetics, but because you understand what it means to be alone. You understand what we're facing." James looked out over the city again. "What exactly would I have to do? I mean, specifically?" The Queen took a deep breath. "Our scientists have developed a way to modify human genetics. The process would allow you to survive in our world permanently. You would be able to breathe underwater, to live at these depths, to be compatible with our biology, and then you would help us rebuild our species. Not just with me, but with many of our people. You would be like a father to an entire new generation." James felt his face flush. That's a lot of responsibility." "Yes," the Queen said simply. "It is." They sat in silence for a while, watching the city below them. Finally, James spoke. "What if I can't do it? What if the process doesn't work? Or I'm not strong enough? Then we face extinction, knowing we tried everything possible," the Queen said. "But James, our scientists have been studying this for decades. They are confident it will work. And if I say no, then you return to your world with no memory of us, and we prepare for the end." James stood up and walked to the edge of the balcony. The weight of the decision was crushing. How could one person make a choice that would affect an entire civilization? "I need to know something," he said. "If I do this, if I help save your people, what happens to me? Do I become like you? Do I stop being human?" The Queen joined him at the balcony's edge. "You would become something new. Part human, part like us. You would keep your memories, your personality, your humanity, but you would also gain our abilities, our longevity, our connection to the ocean, and I could never go back. The changes would be permanent," she said. "You would become part of our world forever." James closed his eyes and tried to imagine it. Living underwater, breathing water like air, being responsible for the survival of an entire species. It was beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. "I have another question," he said. "Why me? Out of all the humans on Earth, why was I the one you chose?" The Queen's skin patterns began to glow brighter. "Because you love the ocean the way we do. You understand its mysteries. You've spent your life trying to protect it. And because She paused, looking uncertain for the first time since he'd met her. Because what? Because when our scientists studied your genetic profile, they found something else. Something that suggested you wouldn't just be compatible with us biologically, but emotionally as well. James looked at her, confused. What does that mean? It means that you have the capacity to truly care for my people. Not just as a duty, but as a choice. Our species bonds for life. James, if you do this, you won't just be helping us survive. You'll be becoming part of our family. The idea hit James like a wave. He had spent his whole life feeling like an outsider, like he didn't belong anywhere. Now he was being offered the chance to not just belong, but to be essential to an entire civilization. I need more time to think, he said finally. Of course, the Queen said. But remember, every day we wait is another day closer to the end. As James returned to his chambers that night, he realized that his choice wasn't just about saving the Queen's people. It was about finally finding a place where he truly belonged. The question was he brave enough to leave everything he knew behind for a chance at something extraordinary? The fate of an entire species rested in his hands, and tomorrow he would have to decide what kind of person he really was. 3 days later, James made his decision. He found Queen Lirelei in the Crystal Library, studying ancient texts about her people's history. When she looked up and saw his face, she knew what he was going to say. I'll do it, James said simply. I'll help save your people. The Queen's skin patterns exploded with light, brighter than James had ever seen them. For a moment, she looked like a living constellation. Then tears began flowing down her cheeks, those strange, glowing tears that disappeared like shooting stars. Are you certain? She asked, standing up from her crystal chair. Once we begin, there is no going back. James nodded. I've thought about it constantly. Up there, I'm just another scientist. Down here, I can actually make a difference. I can help an entire civilization survive. The Queen walked over to him and placed both hands on his shoulders. Then we begin tomorrow. But James, I want you to understand exactly what will happen to you. She led him to a part of the city he hadn't seen before. They descended through spiraling tunnels that seemed to go on forever. The walls here were different. They pulsed with a rhythm that reminded James of a heartbeat. This is the Chamber of Transformation, the Queen explained as they entered a vast room filled with pools of glowing liquid. Here, our scientists have perfected the process of genetic modification. James saw dozens of people in white robes working with equipment that looked like it was grown rather than built. Everything was organic, flowing, alive. In the center of the room stood a tank filled with swirling silver liquid that sparkled like liquid starlight. The process will take 3 weeks, the Queen said. You will need to spend time in that tank while the modification fluid changes your DNA. It will be uncomfortable. Dr. Kelthon, the head scientist, approached them like all the Queen's people. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way. Her skin patterns were different from the Queen's, more geometric, like circuit boards made of light. James Rodriguez, she said, her voice carrying a slight accent that sounded like wind through water. I have been studying your genetics for months. You are truly remarkable. What exactly will change about me? James asked. Your lungs will develop secondary chambers that can process oxygen from water, she explained. Your bones will become denser but stronger. Your eyes will adapt to see in complete darkness. Your skin will develop the ability to regulate pressure and temperature. James felt a chill. Will I still look human? Yes, Dr. Kelthon smiled. You will look the same, but you will be so much more. You will be able to survive at depths that would crush a normal human. You will be able to hold your breath for hours. You will be strong enough to swim with whales. And the other changes? James asked, glancing at the Queen. Your reproductive system will become compatible with ours, the doctor said matter-of-factly. You will be able to father children with our people. Those children will carry the genetic traits needed to restore males to our species. The Queen took James's hand. Are you ready? James looked around the chamber one more time. This was it. After this, he would never be fully human again. I'm ready. The transformation began the next morning. James lowered himself into the tank of silver liquid and immediately felt a tingling sensation all over his body. The liquid was warm and seemed to move with its own intelligence, flowing over his skin like living metal. The first few hours are the easiest, Dr. Kelthon warned. After that, your body will begin to fight the changes. You must stay calm and trust the process. She was right. By the evening, James felt like his entire body was on fire. The liquid was changing him at the cellular level, rebuilding him from the inside out. His bones ached, his muscles cramped, and his lungs burned as they began to develop their new chambers. Queen Lirelei stayed with him through the worst of it. She would sit beside the tank and talk to him, telling him stories about her people's history. She told him about the great migrations across the stars, about the first time they saw Earth's blue oceans from space, about the cities they had built in the deepest trenches. "We were explorers once," she said during his second week in the tank. "We traveled from world to world, learning about different oceans, different forms of life. But when we found Earth, we knew we had found our home." "Why didn't you ever contact humans before?" James asked, his voice strange as he spoke through the liquid. "We tried, long ago," the Queen said sadly, "but humans were not ready. They feared what they didn't understand, so we retreated to the depths and decided to watch from a distance." As the days passed, James began to notice changes. His vision became sharper even in the dim light of the chamber. He could hear conversations happening rooms away. His skin began to develop faint patterns, though nothing like the complex designs on the Queen's people. The most surprising change was emotional. James found that he could sense the feelings of everyone around him. Dr. Kelthan's excitement about the process, the Queen's mix of hope and worry, even the other scientists' curiosity about him. "That's the empathic connection," the Queen explained when he mentioned it. "All of our people share it. It's how we communicate beneath the waves, how we understand each other without words." During the third week, James began to experience something incredible. Memories that weren't his own started flowing through his mind. He saw ancient cities beneath alien seas, wars fought with weapons of living coral. The first time the Queen's people had seen the sun through Earth's atmosphere. "These are the genetic memories," Queen Lirelei explained. "Knowledge passed down through our bloodlines for millions of years. You're seeing our history, our culture, our very souls." James watched in wonder as he experienced the Queen's childhood, her training to become a ruler, the day she realized she would be the last of her line. He felt her loneliness, her fear, her desperate hope that somehow her people could survive. But he also saw something else in those memories. He saw himself, not his physical form, but the idea of him. The Queen's people had been dreaming of a savior from the surface world for generations. In their oldest prophecies, they had spoken of a human who would come from the depths of the ocean to give them new life. "You knew," James said to the Queen on his final day in the tank. "You knew I was coming." The Queen's patterns glowed softly. "We hoped, we prayed to the ocean spirits. We never stopped believing that somehow, someone would come to help us." On the 21st day, James emerged from the tank completely transformed. He looked the same on the outside, but everything else had changed. He took his first breath of water and felt it fill his lungs like the most natural thing in the world. He could see every detail of the chamber, even in the dim light. He could feel the emotions of everyone around him like a warm current flowing through the water. "How do you feel?" Dr. Kelthan asked. James flexed his hands and felt strength he had never known. "I feel ... alive. More alive than I've ever felt in my life." The Queen swam over to him, moving through the water with perfect grace. "Welcome to our world, James Rodriguez. Welcome to your new life." As they swam together through the corridors of the city, James realized that he wasn't just physically transformed, he was emotionally transformed too. For the first time in his life, he truly belonged somewhere. He wasn't just a lonely scientist anymore. He was part of something bigger, something beautiful, something worth fighting for. The Queen's people gathered to welcome him, their skin patterns creating a light show of celebration. Children who had never seen a male of any species stared at him with wonder. Elders who had given up hope looked at him with tears in their eyes. "You did it," the Queen whispered to him as they watched the celebration. "You really did it." James squeezed her hand. "We did it. And this is just the beginning." Looking out over the city that was now his home, James felt a peace he had never known. He had left his old life behind and found something infinitely better. He had found purpose, belonging, and hope. The transformation was complete. Now the real work of saving an entire species could begin. 3 months after his transformation, James had learned to live as one of the Queen's people. He could swim through the deepest parts of the ocean without any equipment. He could communicate through the light patterns on his skin, though his were simpler than those of the others. Most importantly, he had begun to understand what it truly meant to be part of their society. The Queen had been teaching him their customs and traditions. Every morning they would swim together through the city, and she would explain the history behind different buildings and areas. James learned that their entire civilization was built on harmony with the ocean, with sea life, and with each other. "Today is special," Queen Lirelei told him one morning as they sat in her private gardens. Today, we perform the bonding ceremony. James had heard about this ceremony from Dr. Kelthon. It was how the Queen's people chose their life partners. Unlike human marriage, the bonding ceremony actually connected to people at a biological level, allowing them to share emotions and even thoughts. "Are you nervous?" the Queen asked, noticing his quiet mood. "A little," James admitted. "Where I come from, people get married, but it's nothing like this. This seems so much more permanent." The Queen smiled. "It is permanent. Once we are bonded, we will be connected for life. You will feel what I feel, and I will feel what you feel. We will never truly be alone again." The ceremony took place in the heart of the city, in a temple that looked like it was carved from a single massive pearl. Thousands of the Queen's people gathered to witness the event. James had never seen so many of them in one place before. Their combined light patterns created a display more beautiful than any fireworks show. The ceremony itself was unlike anything James could have imagined. He and the Queen stood in the center of a pool filled with bioluminescent water. Elder priestesses sang songs in the ancient language while sea creatures swam in patterns around them. When the Queen placed her hand on James's chest, he felt a warm energy flow between them. It started as a tingling sensation, then grew into something much deeper. Suddenly he could feel everything she was feeling, her love for her people, her hope for the future, her fear that she wasn't worthy of being a queen, and beneath it all, her growing affection for him. "I can feel your thoughts," James whispered in amazement. "And I can feel yours," the Queen replied. "You're thinking about how strange this all is, but also how right it feels." She was exactly right. James had never felt so connected to another person in his life. It was like finding a missing piece of himself that he never knew was gone. But their happiness was short-lived. Just 3 days after the ceremony, trouble arrived in the form of General Cathara, the Queen's former military advisor. James first met her in the council chambers, where the Queen was discussing plans for expanding the nurseries in preparation for new children. General Cathara was tall and intimidating, with battle scars across her arms and the darkest skin patterns James had ever seen. "So this is the human," she said, looking James up and down like he was something unpleasant she had found on her shoe. "He doesn't look like much." "General Saitara," the Queen said firmly. "James is now my bonded partner and a citizen of our realm. You will treat him with respect." The general's laugh was cold. "A citizen? He's been here for 3 months. I've served you for 300 years, and you want me to bow to this ... surface dweller." James felt anger rising in his chest, but through his bond with the Queen, he also felt her caution. There was more going on here than just disrespect. Over the following weeks, James learned that General Cathara led a group of traditionalists who believed that mixing with humans was wrong. They called themselves the Deep Ones, and they had been secretly meeting to discuss their opposition to the Queen's plan. "They want us to abandon Earth," the Queen explained to James one evening as they swam through the outer reaches of the city. "Cathara believes we should use our remaining technology to travel to another world, somewhere far from humans. But that would mean leaving billions of sea creatures behind." James said, "This is your home." "Exactly, but Cathara thinks purity of blood is more important than survival. She would rather see our people die as they are than live as something new." The conflict came to a head when Dr. Kelthon announced incredible news. The bonding ceremony had worked even better than expected. The Queen was going to have a child, the first child born to their people in 30 years. James felt overwhelming joy through his bond with the Queen, but he also sensed her fear. This child would be the first of the new generation, part human, and part like them. Everything depended on whether the baby would be healthy and able to carry on both bloodlines. General Cathara was furious when she heard the news. She burst into the throne room during a council meeting, her patterns flashing angry red. "This is abomination," she shouted. "You carry a mongrel child, a mixing of pure blood with alien genetics." James stood up from his seat beside the Queen's throne. "That child is the future of your people. Without mixing bloodlines, your species dies completely. Better to die pure than live corrupted." The general snarled, "Better to live and adapt than cling to pride and face extinction." James shot back. The confrontation escalated when James discovered something incredible in the genetic memories he had inherited. Hidden deep in the ancient knowledge was information about the plague that had killed all the males. It wasn't natural, it was a weapon. It was created during the War of the 7 Colonies. James explained to the Queen and Dr. Kelthon in the Crystal Library. "Your people weren't just explorers, they were part of a vast empire that stretched across multiple star systems." The memories showed him flashes of the ancient conflict. Different colonies of the Queen's people had fought over resources and territory. One colony had created a biological weapon designed to weaken their enemies by targeting male genetics. The weapon was supposed to be temporary, James continued, but it mutated. Instead of just weakening males, it eventually made them unable to survive at all. Dr. Kelthon was studying the genetic information James had shared. This changes everything. If we understand how the weapon worked, we might be able to reverse its effects completely. But when General Cathara learned about these discoveries, she saw them differently. To her, the revelation that their own people had caused the plague made mixing with humans even more necessary and even more wrong. "We brought this curse upon ourselves through our own violence," she declared to her followers. "Now the Queen wants to compound our sins by polluting our bloodline with alien genetics." The tension reached a breaking point when some of the Deep Ones attempted to sabotage the nursery preparations. They destroyed equipment meant to care for hybrid children and damaged research that could have helped other women conceive. James confronted General Cathara in the military training grounds, a vast underwater arena where warriors practiced combat with weapons made of living coral. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. "Your queen is pregnant with the first child your people have had in decades, and you're trying to destroy everything that could help more children be born." The general raised a weapon that looked like a spear made of crystallized water, because some things are more important than survival: honor, purity, pride. Pride. James couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Your pride is worth more than the lives of every person in this city." "You wouldn't understand," she said. "You're not one of us. You never will be." James felt his new strength flowing through his body. "You're right. I'm not one of you. I'm something new. And so will our children be. That's not corruption, that's evolution." The fight that followed was unlike anything James had experienced. General Cathara was a warrior with centuries of training, but James had something she didn't: the desperate determination of someone fighting for the future of everyone he loved. In the end, it wasn't James who defeated the general. It was the Queen herself, arriving with loyal guards to stop the conflict before it could go too far. "Enough," the Queen commanded, her patterns blazing with authority. "Cathara, you have served our people faithfully for centuries, but you cannot be allowed to destroy our only chance at survival." General Cathara lowered her weapon, but the look in her eyes was still defiant. "This is not over, my queen. There are others who share my beliefs. Then they will have to make the same choice you do now," the queen said firmly. "Accept the future we are building, or leave this realm forever." As the general was led away by the guards, James realized that their challenges were far from over. The Queen's people were divided, and their child would be born into a world where not everyone welcomed the changes that were coming. But through his bond with the Queen, James felt her determination. She would not let fear or tradition destroy their chance at survival. Together they would face whatever came next. The first hybrid child would be born into conflict, but also into hope. And that child would be the beginning of something entirely new, a species that combined the best of both worlds. 2 years had passed since the confrontation with General Cathara, and the underwater city had never been more alive. The Queen and James now had 3 children, beautiful beings who could breathe both air and water, whose skin patterns told stories in languages both human and aquatic. Their eldest child, a daughter they named Luna, had just taken her first independent swim through the city's coral gardens. James watched her play with the sea creatures, speaking to them in ways that amazed even the Queen's people. She was everything they had hoped for and more: healthy, intelligent, and carrying the genetic traits that could save an entire species. "Remarkable," Dr. Kelthon said as they observed Luna from the observation deck. "Her DNA shows perfect compatibility with both species. She will be able to have children with either humans or our people." But Luna wasn't the only success story. Using the information from James's genetic memories about the ancient plague, Dr. Kelthon had developed something incredible: a cure that could restore male genetics to the surviving population. "It will take time," she explained to James and the Queen in her laboratory. "The treatment must be applied to female genetics before conception. But our models show that within 3 generations, we can have a naturally balanced population again." James felt a surge of hope through his bond with the Queen. After centuries of extinction threatening her people, they were finally seeing a path to true recovery. The cure had already been tested successfully. 5 other women in the city were now pregnant, and early scans showed that at least 2 of them were carrying male children, the first natural-born males in over 30 years. But the success had come with unexpected challenges. Word of their achievements had spread beyond the Deep Ones. reaching other underwater colonies that the Queen's people had lost contact with centuries ago. "We received a message yesterday," the Queen told James as they swam through the city's communication center, "from the northern colony near what humans call the Arctic Ocean." The message had been transmitted through deep ocean currents, a method of communication James was still learning to understand. The northern colony had somehow survived the plague, but just barely. They had only a few hundred people left, all female, and they were desperate. "They want to know if our cure can help them too," the Queen continued. "But there's a problem. They've been isolated for so long that their genetics may be too different from ours now." James studied the genetic profiles that had been sent with the message. "What if we brought some of them here? Let Dr. Kelthon study their DNA and see what can be done." "That's what I was thinking too," the Queen said. "But it would mean revealing our location to outsiders for the first time in centuries." The decision became more complicated when they received word from another source, the surface world. James's former research station had been investigating the strange readings they had detected before his disappearance. A team of marine biologists was getting closer to discovering the entrance to the underwater city. "We need to make contact," James argued during a council meeting. "If they're going to find us anyway, it's better to control how that happens." General Cathara, who had been allowed to return to the city after accepting the new reality, was surprisingly supportive of this idea. Her time in exile had changed her perspective considerably. "The surface dwellers are not our enemies," she admitted. "My pride blinded me to that truth. If they can help us, we should work with them." James was chosen to make first contact with the human research team. It felt strange to return to the surface world after so long underwater. The air felt thin, and the sunlight was almost blinding after years in the gentle glow of the deep ocean. Dr. Rebecca Torres, the lead researcher, nearly fainted when James emerged from the water without any breathing equipment. "James Rodriguez," she stammered. "You've been missing for 2 years. We thought you were dead." "In a way, I was," James said with a smile. "But I found something incredible down there. Something that could change how humans understand the ocean, forever." The meeting between the surface researchers and the Queen's people was historic. For the first time in millennia, the two species were working together openly. Dr. Torres and her team were amazed by the advanced biotechnology, while the Queen's scientists were fascinated by human engineering and computing. "Your people have developed incredible ways to communicate across vast distances," Dr. Kelthon observed as she studied human satellite technology. "This could help us reconnect with lost colonies across the globe." The collaboration led to breakthroughs neither species could have achieved alone. Human genetic databases helped identify other compatible individuals who could help expand the hybrid population. Meanwhile, the Queen's people shared their knowledge of ocean conservation, helping humans develop new ways to protect marine ecosystems. But the most important breakthrough came when they combined their efforts to help the northern colony, using human technology to transport the cure and the Queen's people's biological expertise to adapt it. They were able to save another group from extinction. "It worked," Dr. Kelthon announced after receiving word from the Arctic. "The northern colony has successfully conceived their first male child in over 50 years. James felt tears in his eyes as he held his newest child, a son whose skin patterns glowed with the colors of both species' hopes and dreams. Looking around the nursery, now filled with the laughter of hybrid children and the songs of their mothers, he could hardly believe how much had changed. "Do you ever regret it?" the Queen asked him one evening as they watched their children play in the coral gardens. "Giving up your human life for this?" James considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I wonder what my old life would have been like, but then I look at all of this, our children, your people thriving again, the partnerships we've built with the surface world, and I know I made the right choice." The Queen's patterns glowed with contentment. "Our children will grow up in a world where both species work together. They'll never know the loneliness that defined our lives before." James nodded, watching Luna teach a group of human children how to communicate with dolphins. "They're not just hybrids, they're ambassadors. They're the bridge between two worlds." The success of their program had attracted attention from around the globe. Other research stations were requesting partnerships. Governments were offering funding for joint environmental projects. The Queen's people were no longer hidden. They were becoming active participants in protecting the planet they all shared. "We've received another message," General Cathara reported during their weekly council meeting. "This time from the Pacific Deep Colony. They want to establish a trade network." James smiled. "A trade network between underwater cities. 2 years ago, I thought I was just studying fish. And now you're helping to rebuild an entire civilization, the Queen said, squeezing his hand as the meeting ended and the council members swam away to their various duties. James remained in the chamber with the Queen and their children. The youngest, barely 6 months old, was already showing signs of the remarkable abilities that would define the new generation. What do you think they'll accomplish? The Queen asked, watching their son practice his first light patterns. I think they'll do things neither of our species could imagine alone, James said. They'll explore deeper oceans, maybe even travel to those distant worlds your people came from originally. They'll solve problems we can't even see yet. The Queen's patterns shifted to a deep, peaceful blue. And they'll do it together. Human creativity and our connection to the ocean, surface world technology and deep-sea wisdom. James picked up Luna, who immediately began chattering in the mixed language she and the other hybrid children had developed. It was part spoken words, part light patterns, part something entirely new. She's telling me about the whales, she talked. To today, James translated for the Queen. Apparently, they're very excited about the new little ones. As they swam home through the city's glowing corridors, James reflected on how much his life had changed. He had started as a lonely scientist, studying the ocean from the outside. Now he was part of it, connected to every living thing in the depths. Responsible for the future of 2 species. The transformation had been worth every moment of uncertainty and fear. He had found not just a purpose, but a family, a home, and a love deeper than the ocean itself. Above them, the surface world continued its daily rhythm, unaware that beneath the waves, a new chapter in the history of life on Earth was being written. The children playing in the coral gardens weren't just hybrids, they were hope itself, swimming toward a future where the ocean and land would never again be separate worlds. And in the deepest trenches of the sea, ancient cities were awakening, ready to share their wisdom with a planet that desperately needed their help. The age of hiding was over. The age of cooperation had begun.